Tonight, as you settle into rest, I invite you into a world that moves gently, a world where time slows down and where the presence of God feels close, warm, and comforting. It is a world of open hills, quiet winds, and a sky filled with stars that shine like promises. It is the world of a shepherd, a young man named Eliab, who spends his nights under God's vast heavens, watching over his flock and listening for the soft whispers of the Lord. Let your body relax and allow your mind to drift slowly toward that ancient landscape where peace settles over the earth like a warm blanket. Breathe in and breathe out, letting each breath loosen the tension of the day. Tonight, you will walk beside Eliab and rest where he rests, and experience the deep, timeless peace of a quiet night with God. The night stretched softly across the hills of Judah, wrapping the land in a blanket of deep, serene quiet. A gentle wind drifted between the olive groves, gliding over smooth stones and whispering through tall blades of grass. Far above, the sky shimmered with countless stars, glowing like tiny lanterns hung by the hand of God himself. It was the kind of night that seemed to sigh, peaceful and unhurried, inviting even the busiest minds into the calming rhythms of rest. And in this wilderness, beneath the starlit canopy, walked a young shepherd named Eliab. He moved with the slow, practiced steps of someone who knew the land intimately, guiding his flock toward a familiar resting place. His sandals brushed softly against the earth, leaving shallow impressions in the dust that the night breeze would soon erase. Eliab's robe fluttered gently around him, and the wooden staff in his hand tapped the ground with a rhythm that blended seamlessly with the music of the night. His sheep, tired from a long day of wandering, followed him faithfully. Their soft bleats rose occasionally into the stillness before fading again, swallowed by the wide open silence of the hills. Eliab hummed a tune that his mother used to sing, a tune older than he was, older than the hills themselves. It was a lullaby passed down through generations, speaking of God's unfailing protection, of his watchful eyes that never closed, even as his people slept. As he led the flock to the ridge, Eliab paused. The view from this hill always took his breath away, no matter how many times he saw it. The valleys spread out before him like a sleeping quilt of shadows and silver light. The air was cool, brushing against his face with the gentlest touch, as though the night itself were greeting him. Eliab exhaled slowly, letting his thoughts drift like leaves on a river. It had been a long day, longer than most, but here, under the quiet sky, all the heaviness inside him began to melt. He guided the sheep to a soft patch of grass sheltered by low shrubs and smooth rocks. One by one, the flock settled down, curling into small, woolly mounds. He lowered himself to the ground, sitting first, then reclining. The stone felt sturdy behind him, solid, secure, like a reminder that he, too, was held by something far greater than himself. Eliab tilted his head back and gazed up at the sky. The stars glowed brighter now that the moon had dipped behind the western ridge, leaving the heavens open and vast. He could almost imagine God walking among them, arranging each star with gentle intention, whispering promises into their glowing edges. Eliab whispered a quiet prayer of thanks, his voice barely louder than a breath. He didn't speak out of habit, nor out of duty, but out of the overflowing gratitude that filled him in moments like this. It was a gratitude born not of blessings received, but of simply being alive in a world so carefully crafted. The night deepened. A lamb wandered close, nudging Eliab's side. He smiled, gently stroking its head. The lamb settled beside him, curling its small body against his robe. Eliab felt warmth rise in his chest, soft, steady warmth that calmed even thoughts he didn't realize were restless. The gentle breathing of the flock filled the air, a soothing rhythm that blended with the tender rustle of grass. Eliab inhaled deeply, his breath cool and slow, and the quiet wrapped around him like a comforting cloak. He closed his eyes, not to sleep, but simply to rest deeper into the moment. His mind wandered not to worries, not to the tasks waiting for him in the morning, but to memories that carried the same gentle softness as the night around him. He thought of his father, who once stood tall and strong, guiding his own flock through these same hills. He thought of his mother, whose voice had carried hope into every room she stepped into. And he thought of the stories they told him, stories of prophets who listened to God in the silence, of kings who learned wisdom through humility, of wanderers who discovered purpose beneath these very stars. Eliab opened his eyes again, slowly. A gentle shimmer danced across the landscape, a thin layer of dew beginning to form on the grass, catching light from the heavens. The world seemed to breathe in harmony, every hill and valley pulsing with quiet life. And Eliab felt something deep inside him shift. It wasn't a sudden revelation, nor a loud voice booming from the sky. It was a gentle stirring of the soul, like the faintest whisper resting on the edge of thought. He felt it, again a subtle push, a soft nudge from within that urged him to rise. And though he didn't know why, he trusted the feeling. He stood slowly, careful not to disturb the resting lamb beside him. The air around him was even cooler now, brushing softly through his hair. He lifted his staff, feeling its familiar weight in his hand, and looked out across the hills. A faint glow caught his attention. At first he thought it was a star, one brighter than the rest hovering low near the horizon. But as he looked closer, he realized it wasn't in the sky at all, but somewhere far across the valley. A small, warm light flickered there, steady and unmoving, like a distant lantern. Curiosity gently tugged at him. He glanced at his flock. They were safe, tired, and nestled deep enough into the grass that they would not wander. The lamb beside him lifted its head briefly before curling back into sleep. Eliab whispered softly, "Stay here. I won't go far." He began walking toward the ridge, following the faint glow in the distance. Each step was slow, unhurried. The ground beneath his feet felt cool and smooth. The world around him was so still that every sound, the soft brushing of his robe, the gentle crunch of gravel seemed to float through the silence like feathers drifting in air. As he climbed higher, he felt the night open wide before him. The stars reflected on his eyes, and the vastness of the world felt both humbling and comforting. Reaching the top of the ridge, Eliab paused. The glow in the distance was clearer now. It flickered like firelight, warm, steady, inviting, and beside that soft glow, he saw something else, a silhouette, A figure sitting beside the fire, head bowed slightly forward, as though in contemplation or prayer. Eliab hesitated. He rarely encountered anyone this deep into the wilderness at night, especially at this hour, but something in the scene, the calm posture of the stranger, the gentle fading of the firelight. He continued down the slope, letting intuition guide him. The closer he drew, the more the figure took shape. It was an elderly man, wrapped in a simple cloak, his beard silver and long, reflecting firelight with a quiet glow. His posture was relaxed, shoulders loose, hands resting calmly on his lap. He looked like someone who had walked far, someone who had lived many years and carried many stories. Eliab approached slowly, making his steps audible so he would not startle him. The man lifted his head, and his eyes, soft, warm, and deeply gentle, met Eliab's. There was no surprise in them, only calm recognition, as if he had been expecting company. "Peace to you," Eliab said quietly. "And to you?" the elderly man replied, his voice smooth like worn leather, warm as a late summer breeze. Eliab sat across from him, allowing silence to settle comfortably between them before speaking again. "I saw your fire from across the valley," he explained softly. "I wanted to be sure you were well." The man smiled. "Then your heart is a kind one. Few would wander the hills at night for the sake of a stranger." Eliab lowered his gaze humbly. "God teaches us to care for those we meet on the road. And he teaches well," the man replied with a soft chuckle. He adjusted his cloak, the firelight casting gentle shadows across his face. "You are a shepherd," Eliab nodded. "Yes." "A noble calling," the man said. "Few understand how sacred it is to watch over the vulnerable, to guide them, to protect them, to walk ahead even when the night is deep. The greatest leaders began as shepherds, you know." Eliab smiled faintly. "That is what my father used to say." "Your father was wise," the man responded. The fire crackled softly, sending small sparks drifting up into the air like tiny fireflies. They vanished into the night, blending with the stars. Eliab watched them rise, feeling a sense of peace settle inside him as, though each spark carried away a small weight he had unknowingly been holding. For a long moment, the two simply sat together in silence, sharing the warmth of the fire and the stillness of the night. It felt natural, effortless, as though they had known each other for years rather than minutes. The old man's voice entered the quiet again, soft and reflective. "Tell me, shepherd, what brings you out at this hour?" Eliab considered the question. "I felt something." He searched for the right words, not wanting to sound foolish. "A quiet stirring, as though I was meant to walk." "That stirring," the man said gently, "is often the voice of God. He speaks in many ways, sometimes through storms, sometimes through prophets, and sometimes through the stillness of the heart." Eliab felt those words settle deep inside him. The firelight danced softly across the man's face, revealing wrinkles carved by years of both hardship and joy. His presence felt ancient and gentle, like an olive tree that had weathered countless seasons and still stood strong. "You listen well," the man added. "Few people hear him in the quiet." Eliab looked down at his hands, humbled. "Sometimes I'm not sure if what I feel is truly from God." "Ah," the man said warmly, None of us are certain at all times. Even the great prophets questioned the voice they heard. But a heart turned toward God is never far from his guidance. Eliab nodded slowly, letting the words soak into him. He felt the tension inside him uncoil further, replaced by a deepening sense of ease. The man reached toward the fire, stirring it gently with a small branch. Sparks rose again, drifting upward. "The night teaches us much," he murmured. "When the world becomes still, our hearts become clearer. When the noise fades." The hills seemed to stretch endlessly, their silhouettes soft beneath the star-filled sky. A faint breeze passed over them, cool and comforting. He felt as though the night itself were listening. The man's voice softened even more. "May I tell you something, shepherd?" "Yes," Eliab whispered. "There will be moments in your life," the man said, "when you feel lost, even while walking a familiar road. Moments when you wonder if you are enough, strong enough, wise enough, faithful enough." He paused, then continued with a warm firmness. "But God does not choose the equipped. He equips the chosen, and he strengthens those who seek him in the quiet places of the world." Eliab felt emotion rise in his chest. He didn't know why the man's words touched him so deeply, but they did. They reached a place inside him he rarely acknowledged, a place where doubts lingered, where questions about his purpose lived quietly beneath his outward calm. "You carry a gentle spirit," the man added. "It will guide you well. Do not fear the path ahead. You do not walk it alone." Eliab swallowed softly, his voice barely more than a breath. "Thank you." The man smiled. "There is no need to thank me. I only speak what the night teaches." Another long stretch of silence passed, peaceful and full. Eliab watched the fire, then the stars, then the quiet shape of the hills. The night felt deeper now, as if it had embraced him fully. Every sound seemed softer, every breath slower. At last, the man looked toward the sky. "It is late," he said gently, "and your flock awaits their shepherd." Eliab nodded. "Yes, I should return." He rose slowly, feeling the cool air wrap around him. The old man rose as well, steady though aged, his eyes reflecting the fire like tiny golden mirrors. As Eliab adjusted his robe, he realized he wanted to ask something simple, yet deeply important. "Will I see you again?" he asked softly. The man's eyes warmed. "If God wills it." Then he added, with a knowing softness, "But whether I am beside you or not, the one who watches over you never sleeps." Eliab bowed his head in gratitude. "Peace be with you." "And with you, shepherd," the man replied. Eliab turned and began walking back toward the ridge. His steps were slower this time, not from weariness, but from the peace that had settled into his bones. Each breath felt deeper, more anchored. The world around him shimmered gently not, with meaning. When he reached the top of the ridge, he paused and looked back. The fire still flickered, warm and steady. The man stood beside it for a moment, a lone silhouette against the glow. Then, as Eliab blinked, the man turned away, and the fire dimmed into darkness, as if the night had folded gently over it. But Eliab felt no fear, no confusion, only a deep certainty that the moment had been a gift one he would carry for the rest of his days. He walked back toward his flock, guided by the brilliance of the stars. The land felt different now, gentler, more alive. Every blade of grass seemed to shimmer with purpose. Every sound, no matter how small, felt like part of a divine song. When he reached the resting sheep, they stirred quietly, recognizing his presence. The lamb that had curled beside him earlier lifted its head sleepily and bleated once before nestling back against the grass. Eliab sat beside it again, lowering himself onto the soft earth. He leaned back, eyes drifting up toward the endless sky once more, and as the stars shimmered above him, he whispered a simple prayer, a prayer of trust, of surrender, of gratitude for the quiet ways God speaks. Then he closed his eyes, letting the stillness of the night wash over him, knowing he was safe, knowing he was guided, and knowing that even in the silence, God was near.